March 26th, 2015. This meeting is being recorded. Members of the media are present. If anyone would like a recording or copy of this broadcast and of this meeting, please contact either myself or any members of the committee. Good evening, everyone. We'll dive right into our budget. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. I trust everyone has had an opportunity to review the minutes. So we'll take a motion from Patrick, a second from Joe. All in favor? Okay, motion carries. Up next, we have announcements and correspondence and distributions. Any members have any announcements, correspondence, or distributions? Patrick.
So tonight is the last meeting of one of our members, Don Catrocchio. This is his last official meeting as a member of the Milford School Committee. He has someone who has led with his heart from the moment he was elected to this committee, someone who's always brought a unique perspective, and someone whose passion is unquestioned. And so, Don, I'm going to miss not having you around. I wish you all the luck in the world, and I'm sure you're not going to miss the drive down any longer.
Excellent. Thank you, Patrick. Anyone else? Okay. So a couple of things that I have for announcements and correspondence. We'll kind of get some of the stuff. So first and foremost, so Dawn, on behalf of the school committee, as this is your last meeting, we got a gift for you here. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to serve with you, and wish you certainly nothing but the best, Dawn. It's been a pleasure to be able to work with you over these last 3 years, getting to know you as a person as well as a friend and as a community member and committee member here. So I'll certainly miss your passion, your voice, and certainly have always, there's never been a question or mixed messaging of how you're feeling on an issue. You've done your research. You always come extremely prepared for meetings, and continue to be an outspoken advocate for the people of the town of Milford. So thank you, and we'll certainly miss you.
Thank you, Scott.
Mike.
Don, people when you run for school committee don't realize what's really involved in the job. And I think, yeah.
And your names are messed up right now, actually. So right now you're actually Joe Marias.
Getting yourself elected is one thing, and then fulfilling the commitment is another. So as a taxpayer of the town of Milford, I want to say thank you for your service. I wish you and your family the best on your new venture. You and I didn't always agree, but you're not supposed to always agree.
That's right.
So as a committee member, I just want to say thank you and good luck to you.
No, thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. I would say
Sure.
thank Don. It's been a pleasure. I mean, you kind of helped me out in the starts of my first runabout here, and I appreciate everything he's done for me, your advice and everything too. And the gift on behalf of the school committee, I don't know what it is, so you're welcome.
It's not ticking, so that's.
It actually is. It actually is ticking.
It is. It's ticking.
Well,
you're welcome.
It's a clock.
Better end this meeting quickly. Joe, you might want to come and sit.
Now, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Bob.
speaking of ticking, I did have a hand in selecting that gift for you. But I know that you and I may not have agreed on things over the years, but I do want to also thank you. I'd be remiss if I didn't point that out for all the ideas that you brought to the school department, and around safety and security in particular, and ideas you've had to make our schools and our buildings safer for our kids here. And I hope our disagreements are a thing of the past, and I wish you well. And I do thank you for your service to the town of Milford.
Thank you.
Joe.
I mean, you definitely kept things interesting and kept us all on our
Right.
toes the whole time. And no one can argue with the passion and the conviction that you brought to the role. So, thank you.
I also want to say thank you. Also, like Joe being newly elected, you do not realize the time commitment and the strain on your personal life and family life from being here and all of the hours that go into it. And I agree, you always came with a lot of information. I always agreed with you, so I don't know what everyone else is talking about, but I really do wish you well, and I hope, I wish you the best. So it's great to serve with you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Excellent.
Mr. Chairman, before you go on, we also, this is a significant meeting because we don't know the outcome of what will happen. This is the last meeting before there's a reorganization and elections, and certainly wish candidates who are running for re-election. But we want to on behalf of the whole school committee as well, we have a gift for you.
Oh, thank you.
And it's really ticking.
This is just this is not ticking. This is just to acknowledge your chairmanship. And
Thank you, guys.
That's-
And it's not ticking, which is good.
There may be some.
It is, however, a black box, which I'm always concerned about.
There may have
Quite a
been some
rap in
meetings.
that
There may have been some. Melissa, she does a nice job.
Yes. Well, thank
It's
you.
a gavel
Oh.
and a nice plaque that talks about your years of service on there. So,
Thank you. I appreciate that, Bob.
on behalf of the committee.
Thank you from the rest of the committee as well. I appreciate it. Certainly have enjoyed my year as chair. It's definitely as if getting on to and getting elected to the school committee is an eye-opening experience. The chairmanship is equally as eye-opening, and definitely adds some dynamics that you don't realize what you're accepting and when you're taking that on. When that first nomination comes forth and the vote is taken at the reorganization meeting, you get really excited and you're happy to serve as chair, and then you start to realize all the extra work that goes into this job, and it's certainly something that I really have taken tried to take very seriously, and certainly I feel like we've had a very productive year this year, and hopefully we'll continue. Hopefully I've had an impact and a positive outcome on the committee as well as on the schools, and ultimately what we continue to call our customers and our end users, and that's the students in the town of Milford. So thank you guys. It's been an honor to serve as your chair this year, and look forward to hopefully being able to continue to serve with you in the future.
I just have one more announcement.
Okay.
I see that Mrs. Dagnes is here this evening for other business on the agenda, but while she's here, just to announce that on April 26th, retired Milford High School football coach John Dagnes, Daga, will be inducted into the Massachusetts High School Football Hall of Fame.
Oh, nice.
So our congratulations
that's
to
great.
Daga.
Congratulations.
That's all I have, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on from announcements and correspondence. Up next, we have invitation to speak. Mrs. Dagnes. You're here for two things tonight, then.
Yes.
Invitation to speak.
Hello, I'm Judy Dagnes, Director of Nursing for the Milford Public Schools, and I'm here to address the comments made at the last school committee meeting regarding nursing coverage for field trips in our district. As our health concerns steadily increase in our district, we do not want to lower our standard of care and increase our liability. It was suggested that we only send a nurse when there is a medical issue in a class. First, we would have a difficult time finding a class that there is not some type of health issue, whether it be asthma, allergies, diabetes, seizures, etc. It is inappropriate to ask teachers to take the responsibility of assessing these students when they are off campus with no medical backup. Field trips are hectic. Adding another responsibility to the teacher's day is just unfair. This committee had concerns about teachers being responsible for students' health needs during a 40-minute period with nursing presence, yet we are considering making them responsible for the health and safety of a busload of students off-site. Accidents do happen on field trips. We have had staff medical emergencies, students who have received fractures, lacerations, and other injuries while on trips. Not to mention the students who often come to school ill because they don't want to miss their field trip. The only medication a teacher in our district can administer is an EpiPen, and that is with training and on a volunteer basis. It was also mentioned that PTOs have better way to spend their money than on a nurse, but $125 is anywhere from $1 to $2 per student. This is money well spent for parents' peace of mind. All substitute and field trip nurses must be compensated for their professional services due to potential liability issues for the individual and the district under the Tort Claims Act. The possibility of agency nurses was also mentioned, but they come at a hefty price of anywhere from $40 to $60 per hour, which would be a huge financial burden for our PTOs and students who do not use PTOs for funding nurses. There is a huge misconception as to what the responsibilities of school and substitute nurses are. School nursing has become very specialized. You would never expect a music teacher to go in and teach a calculus class. Sub-nurses covering schools and field trips need to be trained. I have difficulty finding nursing coverage because for $125 a day, it is a huge responsibility, and even my most seasoned sub-nurses have increased concerns about covering schools or field trips for the liability it entails. The average nurse who works in a hospital makes anywhere from $40 to $80 an hour with the presence of medical backup at all times. Our present process may not be perfect, But at the end of the day, every parent in this district knows when students are off campus, they're with a well-trained nurse who will maintain safety and confidentiality for their child. If changes are to be considered to a procedure that would have such a huge impact on student safety, it should be addressed at the policy subcommittee before any quick decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
Okay. Anyone else for invitation to speak? Okay. Up next, we have the Milford Public Schools policy readings. So we've got a second reading for our student conduct and a first reading for tuberculosis screening. So I'll turn it over to the policy subcommittee.
Yeah, I guess we could start with the student conduct one.
Okay.
So as you recall, during our first reading, the school committee had some minor feedback, but the biggest takeaway was to solicit some feedback from the staff. So Bob did reach out to the staff, gathered some feedback. For the most part, everyone agreed with the language. There were just some minor suggestions to some of the wording, so you can see that here in red. But overall, I think the intent of the policy remained intact.
Great. Any questions from the committee? Okay. Are you proposing that? Are you proposing that we take a motion to adopt and make the change?
If there's no additional feedback, I would make a motion to adopt and make the change.
I'll second that motion.
Motion from Joe, second from Patrick. All in favor? Okay. Unanimous in favor. Motion passes. Great. Thanks, Joe.
No problem.
So up next, we have the first reading of our tuberculosis screening. We're actually going to have our health officer Paul Mazzucchelli, and we're going to call
Nice to see you.
Judy Dagny's back up as well, our director of nursing. So we'll start off with just thank you guys for coming up. I had an opportunity just for the benefit of the folks that are watching as well as for the committee at large here. I had an opportunity to actually meet with Paul as well as with Judy and Bob with regards to a proposal that Paul had really had around doing some tuberculosis screening. It was a healthy discussion just around how we can continue to help offer this and really do it in an efficient way that's not going to put additional burden on Judy and her nursing staff, as well as ultimately continue to aid and give additional health process for our students. So Paul and Judy, thank you guys for coming this evening. I'll kind of turn over to you guys real quickly here, and then we'll go from there. So.
Well, one of the things that we try to do is make this less intrusive, let's say, on the school department, especially the nursing staff. Like we mentioned before, the nursing staff today isn't like the school nurses that we were used to years ago. You know, you got a little cut in your finger or you banged your head, you got a kiss in the head, and everybody was happy. You know, today it's much more complicated, where you do have, you know, feeding tubes and allergies and, you know, diabetes monitoring and all that. So it's become a lot more complicated than that. So what we try to do is make this a risk-based type of a screening. And like all health policies, it's more or less to assist a school to, you know, maintain a safe and healthy school environment. And one of the major aspects of a healthy school environment is the protection of the diseases. And especially in a town like Milford, like a few other towns, or many towns throughout the state of Massachusetts or throughout the country, we have our share of international students. And some of these students are from areas of the world where tuberculosis is in endemic proportions. And, you know, therefore, by a policy such as this, it could more or less help us to identify and perhaps treat a tuberculosis infection before, you know, it gets worse, or you know, where we didn't even know that we even had one to begin with. So it more or less catches it before, more or less being proactive instead of reactive. And again, like we were mentioning before at our meetings, this whole screening process isn't an actual skin test. The screening process would be a questionnaire that a healthcare provider would fill out, and if there are certain risk factors that they feel as though could indicate that there could be a possible exposure to tuberculosis, then further testing would be done in follow-up. Again, no burden on the school. It's just to be aware. And hopefully we can make this policy or this screening process part of the required physicals that are needed.
We require physicals now upon school entry and then in grades 4, 8, and 11. So when physicals are required, then we'll ask for this form to be completed by their healthcare provider.
Great. The policy subcommittee have had a chance to review the proposals.
We did,
Okay.
yeah.
And for everyone else in the group, if you had an opportunity to review this group. Okay. Any questions or comments from the committee with regards to this particular policy? Okay. All right.
I think it's really very proactive on the part of the district, and it seems low cost to anybody in terms of what we're doing to kids. It's not intrusive.
Right.
It's gathering, I like the screening process, and I just think it's to everybody's benefit to
It sure
to
is.
take the precaution.
Thank you.
Paul, you had me when you said it's not gonna cost us anything. That was it. I was sold.
Since we just came out of meeting with our finance
Yes, I
committee
saw
partners,
that.
you had us at that, we were sold. So that being said, do we have is this something that we wanna send to a second reading, or is this something that we want to, look to make a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion from Joey, second from Mike, all in favor? Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And,
Excuse me, Chairman Harrison,
yes.
now that I have a microphone, I too want to thank yourself and Donnie as well, because it's a little special to me, because when I was chair, no, I believe I was the senior member. You were the chair, Patrick. I was the senior member, and I welcomed you and Donald to the board, and now 3 years have already
Oh,
gone.
wow.
All right, so
Yeah,
good luck and thanks for everything.
you did. Well, Paul, thank you so much,
you, Paul.
and
Thank you.
it's good to see you back in the room.
Yeah.
So, thank you
See you
guys, I
now.
appreciate it, and
Thank
thank
you
you
very
for
much.
bringing this up to
Thank
us.
you.
All right.
Thank
Before,
you.
before you go away, I'm sorry, I wanted to ask Judy, we've now begun registering students for next year, and with this now being approved on a first reading,
Right.
we may have the opportunity to get this out, or do we not have
No,
it this year?
it's too late because the kindergarten registration has already taken place, so we already have gathered the physicals and immunizations for the students who are coming into kindergarten, so we're gonna probably start it in September.
So we're planning
So
to start in
then,
September.
new students coming in September, and then, for next year's kindergarten registration, it will be
That makes perfect sense.
ready.
Okay, very
It's
good.
too late now to do it because the packets had already gone out before this was approved. Okay?
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Thanks,
Thank you, Paul.
Judy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, up next, we have a field trip request form review. I believe this is something that was brought up at, this is the form review that we talked about at the last meeting. So I'll kind of take a look, if anybody's had an opportunity to take a look at the form. Dawn, do you want to just kind of talk on this a little bit, or?
Yep, sure. So again, the whole point wasn't to take away nursing when it's needed. It's to not have to have it all the time. For example, we certainly don't have nurses on buses with the athletic team or in teams or other activities. We, like I mentioned earlier, my son went to Italy, which is a field trip. Didn't need to require a nurse, so. And so, Judy, I totally understand what you're saying, and I'm not trying to say that nurses are not needed. If it came across that way, I apologize to you, but the whole point was to make sure that the kids were able to go on as many field trips as possible, get out there, experience the different cultures and all the great things that they can experience by going on field trips, real life experiences and all that. So really and to the point about the policies, when I had done my research, I wasn't looking to change the policies. I think the policies are all well written, in the best interest of the students in the district. What I was looking for was a change on the request for approval of field trips form. That's it. And I had asked Bob to go to some of the surrounding districts, see what they were doing. Came back with the language that Bellingham utilizes on their forms, in which it says a nurse is required on a field trip if a student going on the field trip requires nursing care. That includes diabetic students inquiring interpretation of blood, glucose, and insulin injections, students who may require diastat administration for seizure disorder, or any student with IEP requirements, nursing services. Many medications, daily prescribed medications, and EpiPens for known allergies can be delegated to staff. Medications requiring nursing assessment, inhalers, Tylenol, ibuprofen, etc., cannot be delegated. If an unexpected medical emergency arises, emergency services 911 should be called immediately. So, you know, if my son was in Italy and there was an accident, I'm sure there would have been 911 and things would have been dealt with and whatever it is. But, you know, I listed all the policies in here, and the one that jumped out the most was the JJA student travel requirement, specifically section 1.6, which says provision for medical emergencies, including attendance medical personnel if necessary. So it's in the policy that, you know, they're able to travel, and yes, if it's necessary to have a nurse, then one should be provided. You know, when I saw Scott's gift, it reminded me, you know, my uncle was the chairman of the school committee back in the 70s, and David Hayes, not the former assistant principal, but he was a paraplegic, and when I was reading the language in these policies, it talked a lot about kids with disabilities and ensuring that they can go on that. And I don't know if he had part in writing that, but I wouldn't be surprised. So again, the emphasis is not to exclude kids by any means. You know, we want everybody to go. If nursing care is needed, we want it provided. This is simply if the roster of kids that is going doesn't require nursing care, to then allow them to go without that being a mandatory thing. When I mapped this all out, I provided this all to you with all of the language from all of the different policies in which it's, you know, it doesn't say anything about anything being mandated or, you know, it can be if necessary and everything else. So all the language in the policies support this. Pat, to your suggestion during the meeting, you had asked, you know, to have Jerry Moody review this. So, and that's why I had sent this out. I forwarded this to Jerry with all of my research results, highlighting everything in the policies, explaining the reasons why, and you know, he wrote back that he has absolutely no difficulty with the language change proposed. So again, what I'm requesting tonight is to simply change the request form that enables groups that don't need medical care to be allowed to go on field trips without a nurse accompanying them.
What would that language be? What would you, because I have the request for the field trip and I'm not clear what you
I
would
had
have.
forwarded this to you. It's what I just read. You know, the nurse is required on a field trip. If a student going on the field trip requires nursing care.
Oh, so you're proposing adding that language
Yeah, this is
into
the language that
request
Bob
document?
got from Bellingham. And by adding that to the form, it would certainly make it a lot easier for groups and kids to be able to go on more field trips. And again, if nursing care is needed, then it'll be provided.
Joe?
So I definitely see where you're coming from with this, Don, but I'd feel more comfortable, because I am concerned about the liability issue, and I know you talked to Jerry, and Jerry didn't feel like that was a problem, but I do think, to Judy's point, you know, parents want that peace of mind. They want to know that there's a nurse on these field trips in the event that something should happen, something that's unforeseen. I'd feel more comfortable if this went through the normal process and it went to the policy subcommittee, and we had a chance to bring Judy in and talk to Judy and kind of get a little bit more detail around it, because I'd be more curious to know why some field trips don't have a nurse, because my preference would be to add language to the policy that says it is required, and find out why they're not traveling with athletes and why they're not going on these other field trips. I just think it needs a little bit more conversation. I'm not sure if I'm ready to make a decision on this just yet.
Again, the reason why I'm not recommending bringing it to the policy committee is because it's not a policy. It's a request form.
But it may become a policy.
Well, that's up to you guys if you want to do that.
So I guess that would be, just for a point of clarification, Don, so is your recommendation and/or, I'm not sure if you're making a motion or not, so I want to just clarify that, is your recommendation, or are you asking that the committee make a motion to accept this to become a policy,
No.
or are you just asking
No.
for that the administration make an adjustment to the form?
That's what I'm requesting. I am requesting or making a motion to have the language changed on the form that allows administration to have the flexibility to make the decision based on the kid's medical history. Because again, I mean, if you're sitting here saying that nurses need to be on buses, then on every single field trip, that means the international ones, that means you know, the athletics, the musical department, all these things. We don't have the resources to do that. And all I'm trying to do is add the flexibility so kids aren't missing out on great opportunities. And I know there was another instance where in the past week or two where another group, you know, unfortunately they don't have the resources. So just by adding this to the form gives the administration the flexibility to say, all right, you know, if a kid needs medical attention, we're going to supply a nurse. And if out of the group we realize nobody has an existing medical condition, then the kid should be able to go without any restrictions. So again, it's to the form, you know, it's not to a policy. And so what I'm requesting is to add that language to the request for approval of field trip forms.
Mike, I saw your hand up for your question first, and then we'll go to you, John.
I appreciate your passion, but what I have a problem with, and you've heard me speak about this before, is that we're 7 elected members, and not one of us is in the medical field as far as being a doctor or being a nurse. And so I have a real problem trying to change that form. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm saying, can we slow the process down so that Mike Walsh, as a committee member, can get questions answered that he has, you know, whether I think it's a good move or a bad move. I want to have a medical professional come in here and say, this is why you can't do it, or this is why you can do it. And I think that's what we need to, personally, I think that's what we need to do before we vote to change a form. We have to make sure that we're doing it properly. I go back to the same situation we had when we brought Dr. Perriello in on the concussion policy. We did the right thing. We went out into the medical field, got a very well-respected pediatrician, brought him in, listened to his report, took his advice, and made a logical decision. I think this is a little fast. I don't think we have enough information in front of us to make a decision like that. So what I'm asking everybody is to consider, let's go forward with it, but let's slow it down. You know, we don't have to vote tonight. We have plenty of time. But let's find out first off if it's really what should be done for the safety of our children. Because the other thing that concerns me is if there isn't a nurse on the bus or on the field trip, we kick it into the responsibility of the administrator. Well, how does a high school principal or vice principal or assistant superintendent of school knows who's supposed to go where and who's supposed to get what, and what this happens, how do you treat them? How do you treat the child? And I'm uncomfortable making that decision right now, so.
Jen?
I think along the same lines, I think there are a lot of things we could look at, and there may be times where we should exercise more flexibility. And I know even in my own school, we were on the verge of canceling a field trip from Northborough to Shrewsbury because we didn't have a nurse. We got one at the last minute, and I kept saying to myself, this is so ridiculous. We're going up the road. We don't have significant problems. It doesn't make sense. But I have a few other concerns in terms of just the everyday practice. And one of it is safety of all kids. And Judy is dead on. We have kids that get out of the car in the morning, and the parent will say to me, they have a stomach ache, they don't feel well, but they want to be here today. And if you have one child who's really ill on a field trip unexpectedly, I want to understand then who's watching the other kids. And we have ratios in this policy, 1 adult to up to 10 kids on some of these field trips. And so a lot of times teachers will take kids that are maybe at risk of running or maybe have more significant behaviors there with the teacher. If the teacher has to go now deal with an ill child, who's watching all of those kids? And we may want to differentiate. Maybe we look at high school differently. Maybe we look at voluntary out-of-school day field trips differently because parents have made a choice. But, I even thought about if you didn't have a nurse, would you add more chaperones? But interestingly, over the weekend, a parent made a comment to me that they were concerned that parents are being asked to pay if they're a chaperone. So, and they said, if I'm a chaperone and I'm donating my time, why do I have to pay to go on the field trip? And I understand the reasons why they may have to, but we also may have fewer parents, if that's the case, being willing to chaperone, which again goes back to that supervision and safety issue. So you know, I'd like to see us talk about it and make a logical, decision and maybe some changes to it, but, I wouldn't be ready right now to say, that we put blanket statements on there saying no, that we don't have to worry about nurses, because it's the unexpected. We know the cases we know, but we don't know the unexpected, and that's what, makes me nervous.
Patrick?
I don't think we need nurses on school trips. I don't think they should be mandatory required. I think that my main concern was liability, and Jerry's opinion essentially said that he wasn't concerned about increased liability. That was my big challenge, my big issue. So and that's my opinion. Now it's open to be changed. More information could change that. That's my opinion today. And this isn't, well, they never had school nurses when I went to, and that's not what it's about. It's about, my concern is the liability for the school district, and if our town council saying that the liability might not be there, then I'm comfortable with that. However, I also think that we should probably square the policy away first and then decide how the form's gonna work after. So long as Bob can tell us that we're not gonna be denying field trips for lack of nurses, and I think that we kind of started to address that at our last meeting. My biggest concern are any kids not being able to go on a field trip because we have an absence of nurses. And, as long as you can tell me that is fixed and that's not gonna be a concern right now moving forward, then I'm comfortable taking this up with the policy subcommittee and then figuring it out, because this is just a form. This isn't a policy. This is a form.
So Patrick, to your point, what would be wrong with adding this language so that way the remainder of the year here, Bob has that flexibility? Without this language in here, he doesn't have that flexibility.
I guess I don't understand what language you want to add.
And that way, well, I emailed this to everybody 9 days ago.
Right.
So everybody has it.
But
And this is language that Bob found and Jerry has reviewed and
But that's
signed off.
policy.
No, this is not policy. This was a paragraph. The one that I just read was to add that to the form, the request form for a field trip. So all that does is it gives Bob and the administration the flexibility to sit there and say, is there a child or children on this field trip that are
Could you
gonna
read that
need-"
again? Just read that.
Sure.
Thank you.
So it says, a nurse is required on a field trip if a student going on the field trip requires nursing care. That includes diabetic student requiring interpretation of blood glucose and insulin injections, students who may require diastat administration for a seizure disorder, or any student with IEP requires nursing services. Many medications, daily prescribed medications, and EpiPens for known allergies can be delegated to staff. Medications requiring nursing assessment, inhalers, Tylenol, ibuprofen, etc., cannot be delegated. If any unexpected medical emergencies arise, emergency services 911 should be called immediately. So it's again, it's just adding that paragraph onto the form that gives them the flexibility to say, is anybody in this group of kids in need of nursing care? And if so, then a nurse is required. If not, it would give Bob the flexibility to say, okay, you're not going to be prohibited from going on this field trip. You can go knowing that 911, is the protocol on here. And again, to my point, I mean, we put kids on buses every day out of this building without nurses on them. I'm not looking to change the policies, and if you add this paragraph to the form, all it's doing is giving Bob the flexibility. If between him and Judy and everybody else feels that a nurse is necessary with that group, then they should be able to determine that.
Okay. Mike first and then Joe.
Donnie, I go back to what I'm uncomfortable about is putting the liability and the burden on the administration. They're not medical people. So how do they, just because a child is standing in front of you and looks okay, as a superintendent of school or as the high school principal, I go back to the vice principal, you don't know medically what that child has for any kind of a condition, or if something could happen. Where if a nurse, and again, I'm not disagreeing with you, I just need time. But if a nurse is on the bus, we're covered. We're covered, But if we leave the responsibility up to the administration right now, to me, it's just, I'll be honest with you, I see a liability in it.
So
you know?
here's what I would say. A couple things. I just want to. There's definitely a lot of discussion around this. I guess here's my question. It's not a policy that we're looking to adopt unless there's a motion that's made for there to be a policy that we're accepting. If there's a motion, great. Well, let's take that motion now. And then if there's a second and there's a majority of the vote of the committee, then we'll move forward with it. If there's not a motion for that right now, then you know, what we need to do then, if we're proposing that it be reviewed as a policy by the policy subcommittee, great, as this board and continue to look to adopt it, then great, then we can certainly do that and have it go through the normal process. If this is just a form requirement, the school committee is not required to vote on forms. That's something that Bob, as the superintendent of schools, has the ability through town council and as the superintendent of schools to make that decision. Certainly gathering input, and thank you, Donnie, for doing the research that you've done with making that change on the form, as well as what the requirements are. Then that's up to the school administration, and that's something that we can certainly take that's up to Bob to ultimately make that decision. So I guess my first question is this. Is there well, I'll put it out first. Is there a motion to make this a change, to make this become a policy of the Milford Public Schools? So I'll open that up first.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Certainly.
Do we have any field trips on the calendar right now that aren't covered by a nurse?
I have to defer to Judy. I know that at the last meeting was brought up about the a debate group, and I think you forwarded that to the committee. We've corrected that. We've been able to find nursing coverage. Judy, I'd have to ask you. I know springtime, a lot of times there's trips coming up.
We have about 50 trips booked right now, and I probably have about 10 trips that aren't covered, but I plan to get coverage.
Okay.
I do have to say, can I speak?
It's up
Judy,
to the
why don't you come on
chairman.
up just so everybody can hear you? We can hear you, but we want the people at home to be able to see you.
When you speak about Bellingham's policy, I also know that you looked at several other districts' policy, and they do require nursing coverage. Why you would select one district, I don't understand. The other thing is Bellingham may have delegation for field trips. We have to apply for that. We don't have that right now in Milford. All we have is delegation of EpiPen administration for staff to be able to give it. That's all we have. What that means is any teacher can volunteer to be trained, but if a child should have an allergic reaction when they're on the trip, somebody that we didn't know had an allergy, they cannot give that EpiPen. Only a nurse, a medical person, can give that EpiPen on a trip. So we don't even have the delegation that they're speaking about in Bellingham. We have to apply through the DPH for that, and we are allowed to do that once a year. We only have EpiPen delegation.
Okay. So thank you, Judy. I think part of what we need to address with this then is we got to take a look. I guess part of what we need to make sure as well with field trip requests is whatever it is, it needs to be fair and equitable. It needs to be across the board. If we've got field trips that are going out of here, whether they're overnight, whether they're internationally, or whether they're domestic and to down the street, we've got to make sure that we're treating whatever it is very consistently. As an example, if we're sending kids to Washington, D.C., are we sending a nurse along with them? Are we yep, and I know we're sending multiple. If we're sending kids to Italy, if we're sending kids to France, are we sending nurses along with them and requiring them as part of the chaperone? So what I'm gonna ask is, at this point is, we've got a lot of discussion around this. There's a lot that still needs to be uncovered from it. I want to make sure that we continue to be able to move forward with this agenda item. It's not a policy. If we're recommending that it be a policy, so I'll open up once again. If there's a motion to make it a policy, then let's take the motion now.
To make what a policy? The
To
form?
make the change to the requirement of the changes for it being an administrative judgment, for it being for a nurse being required.
But Scott, you said where it's not a policy, then
Yep,
technically.
it's not, so that's what I'm saying.
Technically, Bob has the flexibility to change that the way he wants right now.
Correct.
So if it's not a policy and he wants to make a change to have kids be able to go on the field trip, even though there isn't nurse coverage, then he has that flexibility on his own.
That's Bob's discretion with
Alright.
regards to any form. that we're talking about here, that's at their discretion of the superintendent of schools. We're not voting on every form. We wouldn't get anything else done. There's 8,000 forms that come out of this building every day.
I really do think this is best taken up by the policy
Yeah,
subcommittee.
I agree.
I honestly, I would like even more simple language than what you suggested. I would say if any parent wants a nurse in the trip, then we'll supply a nurse.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think it could be even simpler than that. I think it could be very easily dealt with. I think there's just so much discussion right now.
Yeah.
I feel like
That's what I'm saying. So let's
Yeah.
move it forward to the policy subcommittee for review, so that we can look at the adoption of this, and look at potential changes if we wanted to adopt a field trip, a change to a field trip policy, and an adoption there. Then let's go ahead and do that. Okay. So we'll move that forward to the next agenda item for the policy subcommittee. Thank you, Judy. Up
Thanks,
next.
Judy.
We have the technology department update, help desk service, service level agreement, network mapping assessment. Mr. Paul Blivis.
Good evening,
Good
everyone.
evening, thanks for
Evening.
coming.
Thank you for having me.
So, Paul, we met a couple weeks ago. You'd said that the mapping was underway and that you were expecting the policy you were expecting it to be completed last Friday. And that you'd be in a good place to be able to get that done and be able to give us an update today. So I'm hoping that you have one for us as far as what's the next step? Where are we here?
Okay, are we talking about the mapping, or we want to go into that first?
Let's start with the mapping, and then we'll
Okay.
go to help desk.
Yep,
So-
I continue to have, I had one this morning, a project meeting with their technical team and our network guys too, and we're still progressing quite nicely with that. The actual physical part of the mapping is complete. They got their device back, now it's in the data crunch stage. They're analyzing all the data, the information that was gathered, and the more we dig down deep into this, the more complex it becomes. There's more pieces, there's more moving pieces, there's more discovery that we found that really impacts maybe the phones and the door systems and that sort of thing too. So we're progressing enough that we can plow through a few of those issues, but we didn't want to present anything that wasn't ready yet. So it's a positive motion, but they're still in the analyzing stage at this point.
So we don't have a plan yet.
As far as
So-
the overall from
Yeah,
the
so-
results of the mapping?
Yeah, so I'm gonna, I'll kind of go back to move forward.
Yep.
So, in our second meeting in January, you came before us and there was a request for funding that was submitted and approved.
Yep.
For putting forth this mapping.
Correct.
At that time, you'd let us know as a committee that the timeline that you expected for that to be completed and for you to have a report. In fact, there was a request by this committee and I for additional funding that may be coming forward. I proposed at the time if we wanted to authorize the board, because we don't want our meeting schedule to hold up anything if we need to hold emergency meetings, if need be, to be able to provide support. You told us that the mapping would need to be done first before we can go to that next step. Told us that that would be completed in the month of February. Wasn't completed in the month of February. We had some extenuating circumstances with regards to Mother Nature not cooperating, which I certainly understand, certainly towards the beginning of the month. So 2 weeks ago, you came before us and said it had started in March, and the end of February, the beginning of March. It was now in play. It was taking a little longer than you anticipated, but I had asked you at that meeting if it would be ready for that report for you to be able to present to us what your needs were going to be by this meeting, and you'd said absolutely. So you'd said yes to us. So, great.
Yep.
So I guess here's my concern, and this is what we continue to kind of talk about is. We talked about it back in October when you first came for us, as well as in January, and earlier in March, and now a second time in March. The time is passing very quickly here. I understand the need to make sure we digest the information and make educated decisions. I'm disappointed that we're not ready yet to make some recommendations, because we've been talking about this for a long time now. I think you've got the willingness of a committee that's expressed their willingness to move forward and try and progress this and give you as much support as we possibly can. Going back to our initial meeting back in October, after you'd just been on the job for a couple of months. So what is the timeline now for when you believe that the network mapping assessment, you'll be ready to provide a result for this committee so that we can take a next step forward in starting to address the technology, the significant technology needs of the school system? Because, you know, we're hearing it from across the town. Our Board of Selectmen brought it up again on Monday. I get to. You know, they're concerned about our technology. We're concerned about it, and I know you are as well. So if you can kind of, I'll get off my soapbox here for a second, because and I'll let you talk.
Okay. No, and I'm the foremost proponent of getting it accurate and getting it correct the first time, and that's why we're taking a little bit more time than anticipated, was to make sure that we have every school outlined as to what are the needs, and I specifically laid out the objectives that we need to make sure that are in place, and it's not a matter of rushing any of this, and Wally Computer is the one that's performing the mapping and the assessment and the data analysis. And, you know, as I said, we have continual meetings, and it's just something that we can't pinpoint to say, okay, here's a definitive date at this point, which earlier we thought we could, but now that we're getting into the more depths of each of the closets and the access points that we have now, it's just understanding, okay, now we got to go back and look at the phone system. Now we got to go back and look at, you know, different architectures and so forth. So it was a moving target now, but I would say we're in the final stages probably of completion. They have all the numbers and everything. It's just a matter of wrapping all of that up, understanding what we need going forward as far as wireless and all the objectives that I laid out. So I was just talking with Chris Moran again today, and I know we have budgetary constraints. We have timelines we have to meet, and I was trying to push that along with Wally themselves too. So that's kind of where we stand right now.
Mike?
I actually reached out to World Band on my own and had over an hour and a half conversation with somebody.
Yep.
And they give you an A. They said he's doing a great job. He's doing the best that he can with everything that he has to deal with. They said that every day he's uncovering things that he just did not know that were there. I'd like to make a recommendation that we bring World Band in here in the next meeting or two with Paul.
Certainly.
Because that's one thing that was stressed, was that you rushed this plan, you're gonna go backwards. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to slow the plan down so that the plan that he does eventually bring to us. And I was one of the committee members that was sitting here a little while ago saying, you know, you're dragging your feet. Well, I have a whole different feeling now after talking to technical people.
Yep.
And what they're saying is we're trying to rush something that shouldn't be rushed, because if you want it to come out right, you have to take your time. So I think the right thing to do, in fairness to Paul and Paul's department, let's bring World Band back in here, even if it's the next meeting. It's, you know, a couple of weeks away, and let's have them tell us, you know, a different side of the story. Why it's taken so much time, why it can't be rushed, what's the right thing to do, what are the things that you're uncovering, because there's quite a few of them. It's very amazing. So that would be my recommendation.
I agree with Mike's sentiment entirely. It needs to be done right.
Yeah.
It has to be right. However, I, like Scott, share concern about being given a deadline and the deadline gets missed, and then we're given a deadline and the deadline gets missed. And at some point, someone needs to have the vision to say, I can't sit here in front of you and give you a deadline. Because if you don't know what the deadline is, and if the unanticipated things that keep happening, well, at some point they become anticipated. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so my challenge, what I'm challenged with, is how do I react when I'm told something is going to be on this date and then it doesn't happen? And then I'm told again it's going to be on this date and it doesn't happen. So at what point do I become a fool for believing the deadline's actually real? So I think I agree with Mike. It has to be right. It has to be right. I also agree with Scott. We can't have these deadlines that aren't real. Because it creates an expectation not only among the members of this board, but of the people in this community, that we are addressing things with a certain timeliness. And then when we don't meet that timeliness, it reflects very poorly upon the Milford Public Schools. And I do an awful lot, and everyone on this board does an awful lot to make sure that people don't reflect poorly on the Milford Public Schools. And so deadlines are very important.
Yep. Yeah, point well taken, and it was probably my fault initially because I was under a budget constraint as far as like the finance committee needing something at a given point. So I'm pushing Wally to make sure we get something at a given point, and it didn't happen. So that's I completely understood.
And just for a point of clarity, to Patrick's point as well, the timelines we're working off of,
Mhm.
I don't think there's anybody at this table that's given you a deadline or provided you with a deadline. We've asked for what your anticipation is.
Okay.
So, I'll reiterate again, as we've talked about in previous meetings, don't tell us what you think you want, what we wanna hear, tell us what you think it really is. We're all pretty patient people. Tell us what you think that deadline really is. That's what we're gonna hold you to, but we're not assigning deadlines. We didn't assign this one, we didn't assign the one in February, we didn't assign the one in January, we didn't assign the one at the beginning of March, we didn't assign this one. We're asking you for it. Tell
Okay.
us what you think it will actually be, and I understand nightmares that uncover. I got it. I certainly understand. We've been talking about this for a long time.
Right.
That there's a lot of things you're gonna continue to uncover. I would, to Mike's point of, let's go to Wally. And if you do, and to your point, and well, it's Wally that's conducting the information, Mike.
Right.
So Wally that's doing that information, going with Wally and being able to get this stuff. What I would say is, to your point, and I congratulate you for this, even just saying, you know what? There's so many things that haven't been unplugged yet, we don't even know, so it would be unfair for me to give you a deadline. I respect that.
Okay.
And you know what? I'm good with that, I get it. That makes things a little different,
Okay.
than saying, you know what, I need a deadline, I need this, we're not asking for it, we're asking when you think it's gonna be done, and if you don't know because there's too many,
Right.
there's
Okay.
too many variables, you gotta tell us that, cause we don't live in your shoes and we're not the one opening those closet doors, we don't have that level of expertise. We're
Okay.
relying on you to provide that to us.
All right, no, it's good to know. Just real quick too. Just from what I was hearing earlier, it's like you've been at this for this long. We started back here, so that's where the pressure was,
Yep.
being felt. Is like, oh man, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. But it's the process that takes the time. So okay,
Here's
I
what
understand.
Yep, here's what I would tell you, Paul.
Yep.
If you told me it was June, we wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah, true. Okay. Yep.
So I was gonna clarify that, World Band did our assessment in June, I believe, of last year, and gave us kind of, the big picture. And, and that I was gonna clarify that it is Wally Computer Associates that you're working with right
Yep.
now to do the complete diagnostic. So I am interested in having them come in and present their findings. I do agree with, all the things that they're uncovering. I'm expecting this thing to be a mountain,
Mhm.
right? And I told you this from the beginning,
Right.
that, you inherited a mess, and I wasn't joking. This is something we've been asking for years. Whatever the number is in everybody's head, it's gonna be triple that. That's my expertise in this field. It's gonna be triple. The only thing I ask is when you come back and you present this to the board and to the town, is you map out, the priority list, and you deliver it as, here's what it costs, here's what it's gonna cost for us to outsource this, and this is what it's gonna cost if we build this in-house. Because the one thing I keep hearing about is building an IT department, and, which is great for, handling the tickets and, the hardware requirements and everything else that belong in this building. But there are a lot of things that we could do a lot faster and cheaper if we outsource this thing. And I think it's gonna be really important to view it with both options on the table, so we can understand the true impact, not just to the budget, but to the time it's gonna take to get that accomplished. So that's all I have to say about it, but.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be night and day too.
Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
Mike?
If I could make a suggestion, and I use Patrick as an example, every committee meeting, we get a result of how the Woodland School project's going. I'm wondering if it'd be worth our while to maybe every school committee meeting, very short agenda item, or maybe every other, have Paul and Wally come in, and so instead of putting yourself with a deadline and a date,
Yep.
that you're probably not gonna meet again, come and give us progress reports, and eventually we'll get to where we need to be. But to Don's, defense, he's 100% right. The conversation that I had, every day you're uncovering things that you had no idea. So I believe it is gonna be a mountain, Don. I really do. But I think maybe the way to address it is to have you just keep coming to us with progress reports.
Okay.
That's just my opinion, one school committee member, but instead of saying it's gonna be done by this date, and we know it's not gonna be done by that date, continually come back to us and show us that you're making forward progress, so that we as a committee know what direction we need to go in.
Yeah, I can certainly present. And Bob's point, you know, he's wanting, you know, every couple of weeks updates to present here at the school committee meeting. So I can be present, or I can send them to Bob and he can reiterate or pass them along to.
I'd rather have you here.
Okay, great.
Rob Quinn's the expert in putting together a priority spreadsheet, maps out, you know, the projects that he's working on, the financial impact, how long it's gonna take for him to do these things, what's, you know, a capital project, what isn't. Once we get that assessment from Wally and it's prioritized, you know, I would recommend you kind of follow that, and that would be a nice thing to be able to deliver, to Mike's point, on a regular basis, that we can view that spreadsheet, you know, by priority, timelines and everything else, and just make sure things are progressing the way they need to.
John?
It's gonna sound like a really dumb question, but not knowing much about your position, are your days spent with Wally Computer? Do you accompany them on all these walkthroughs? Are you spending the entirety of your work days on this?
Yes, that's primarily my focus, is completing this project so we can move forward with budgetary things and prioritizing the project. Yep.
Okay. I mean, the thing that I'm still worried about is, and it might come up with the technology task force that I assume Kevin will be reporting on, is that vision of where are we going with technology for instruction. And I'm just wondering if there's any room anywhere for that work to be done concurrently with all the mapping and all of this obviously foundational important work. But I would also hate to see at the end of this work us have a plan for hardware, if you will, but no plan in place for what we're going to do now. And I'm really looking for that leadership, and I'm not quite clear on the hierarchy of who's really directing the staff and who's really leading technology growth and planning for that, especially knowing Woodland is not very far off from its opening. So I'm just wondering, I don't know if that's your department, Kevin, or yours.
Yeah, from a curriculum, how technology is going to work in terms of curriculum, we've got a lot of things kind of in motion right now, and I think Bob's going to speak to some of that.
Okay.
But I can answer any specific questions after he presents as well.
Okay, all right, that would be helpful.
So,
Scott,
Don.
one last thing. We've all known this is a problem for a long time, and you know, if we failed to do anything as a committee in the last few years, is to really push this thing. I think we could have done a better job ourselves as a committee to make sure these things got done prior to mission critical. What I might suggest, you know, the next meeting you're going to be discussing subcommittees. It's probably a good idea to put a technology subcommittee together to work with Paul and his team to make sure, especially with the Woodland rollout, that these things are addressed, and we have a group that can work off hours. And Mike, you and I have seen what we were able to do with the safety and security.
Absolutely.
I think it would be probably in best interest of the town to have a technology subcommittee put together, you know, after the election.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep. Paul, you want to move on to help desk service level agreement?
Certainly. Help desk is just from the last couple of weeks. I'm incredibly proud of our team in terms of getting those tickets down to a very manageable level. I think before we started out at 130, and then we chopped it down to 60, and then 40, and now we're right around the mid to low 20s. And so, just for an understanding for everyone, we're always going to carry tickets with us. There's never going to be a point where there's zero. I think we all agree upon that. And, you know, just looking over, I printed out a little sheet beforehand, and we're down to right about 20 in itself. And so we're answering these quickly. And there's only 4 that are over 7 days, and none that are under 30, you know, I'm sorry, all that are under 30. So we're in a really good spot for the help desk, and we've got a lot of positive feedback from teacher community as well as you know, different schools and so forth too. So I was just gonna congratulate my team for that, cause they're doing a great job and keeping up with that stuff,
That's great.
so.
Excellent,
Yeah,
and
great
and
job.
congratulations, great job. I've
So,
heard
yeah.
nothing but great things from the teachers as well, and
Yeah.
as well as administrators on the great work that you and your team are doing in catching up and staying ahead of those tickets and really shortening that length of service time. So
Yeah.
that's fantastic, and certainly some great forward progress.
I've heard a lot
Patrick.
from teachers about the tickets and how they don't linger out there for a long time, and that's a credit to your entire team. So
Yep.
that's wonderful news here, especially the fact that none are older than 30 days, which is
Right,
a
yeah.
wonderful thing to hear.
Yeah.
That's great. When you think about the journey that we've been on with this and really the very significant work you and your team have done with really closing out those tickets and getting us to the point where we are right now,
It's great.
Yep.
it's night and day. So congratulations. That's great work. Nice
Good.
job.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And
What
that
is
kind of
your
lead, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What is your expected service level agreement that you've got? I know you've got one here for us.
Yeah, I think all of you probably have a copy of it, but, you know, I was just gonna go through it a little bit in terms of kind of the purpose behind it was just so, it really is kind of an internal agreement. It's not really an SLA because then you have kind of, you know, a financial obligation and so forth. But it just goes in to talk about what our department's going to offer in terms of response times, you know, to low and medium and high priorities. Basically what those are, and, you know, a continued effort to put those fires out immediately and then, you know, rank the ones that are different priorities. So, you know, it's a typical SLA in terms of, you know, we're going to respond at a certain time. When a ticket comes in, they automatically get a immediate response from the help desk system itself. And then I think that's our vehicle of communication with the end users, so that they can automatically get an update to know that their ticket's not just hanging out there, that we're proactively involved in their ticket all the way through. So that SLA or OLA operating level agreement really goes into place. But it gives us some leeway too in terms of constraints. If something's out, then the ticket might be delayed a little bit as well. That's just a natural course of operations too, you know, and depending on the day, and we only have 2 technicians. So if one of them's tied up for 4 hours, then your ticket might be a little bit lengthened in that regard. So, but it also gives us some, you know, it holds the end users to their side as well, because they need to put in as much detail as they can within that ticket and understand response times and know how to escalate and that sort of thing too. So it's a real basic structure that kind of helps both sides, the end users and us, to come to a comfortable medium in resolving their issues.
Great.
So.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
I just got
Joey.
one question. With the help desk tickets, is that just school-wide? Or, I mean, do you have other tickets for the town? Not that I
Yeah,
don't
we
care
have
about the rest of the town, I
Yep.
care more about the schools, but I'm just curious, I mean, do you have other departments too that are backed up
It's
just as
it's the
much?
same. We're all in one.
Okay.
So we're doing the town side and the school side.
Okay.
So yeah.
I'm just curious, I didn't know if we held you up from doing other parts of other services for the town too.
No, it's a continual effort. I mean, it's side by side. It's whatever the day presents is what we focus on. So yep.
Okay.
Both sides.
Excellent. Anything else? Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming in front of
Thanks.
us.
Appreciate
Look
your
forward to
time
getting the
as
next
usual.
update.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Up next, we have the report of the superintendent of schools. Bob.
Yes, and Paul, if you could just stick back, not at the table, but just be in the room for the updating. And I want to thank the team here for coming tonight as well. Brandon's over there in the corner. And I know that Jonathan was sick as well.
Yeah, a couple of
Couldn't be here this evening, so thank you guys for coming out tonight and for your work. Just to give the committee an update, this is really part of the goals that I had set for the year, and we'll hopefully address some of the questions you had asked. Because what's happening, and I think some of the frustration, Paul, is as you feel it yourself, and you've been very much part of this process of where we're headed with technology is a one-to-one initiative of where we're going to end up with that. But we have the timing of the Woodland School project, the need to make sure that systems are not so proprietary, that Woodland School, what comes in for equipment, for servers, for switches and network and so forth, make sure that speaks in a way with our other district systems, so we're not having to replace everything again. That's important. Also, that it's critical, is we have this, we have to plan for what we're gonna have for technology for that school, before it opens. That's, and Paul's well aware of that critical deadline. So there is a deadline from me on that with you. The other piece that we talked about in the budget meeting earlier is around the E-rate reimbursement, where we have the opportunity to get 60% of what we're spending for technology costs reimbursed to the town. So those are some pretty firm deadlines that Paul's up against. We've been embarking on this one-to-one journey for a while now. Kathy, Kevin, myself, Don, I think your suggestion of having a subcommittee, probably the easiest thing to do is to have a member or two of the school committee join that technology task force, as opposed to creating a whole other kind of committee. We've done an awful lot of work on that. It includes the principals, it includes Sarah Boyle, our technology integration teacher, among others on this force. We've gone to visit most recently Medfield Public Schools. We visited the Westwood Public Schools, we visited the North Attleboro Public Schools, just to see how they're rolling it out or how they've gone about that, the costs, and we spent, I don't know, anywhere from 3 to 5 hours per district. And we travel and debrief. We have more coming up. We are now, in fact, it's changed a lot of our philosophies. And to tell you what initially we were thinking is, we want to make sure we're not in a place where we're handing devices to kids and saying to our staff, let's figure out how to use these. That is not the place we want to be. It's not this initiative. This is just a tool. It's how we can use this to engage kids in a more productive way in learning. And we have to make sure we have the buy-in from our staff, so there's not looking at one more thing. You now want us to use these. We don't want them sitting on shelves where now the teachers and the kids don't care, they don't know how to use them. So there's gotta be a whole level of professional development that has to happen as a first step before we even put a device in anybody's hand. The question that we're trying to answer in our research is, what is that device? And how do we wanna go about paying for it? And how will that look? And what's the shelf life of these devices? So there's a lot of pieces that we're looking into this, and there'll be a more comprehensive result, a report rather, once we're finished with that. We have a need also to look at where I believe, where we're offering computer teaching right now. Right now we have computer teaching happening at the middle level, at Stacy Middle School. In my view of that, and it's far too late. I mean, these kids are coming in, many of them with skills much earlier. So we need to reallocate or redeploy. That creates other kinds of challenges for us, because those teachers create specials and they create electives, opportunities for teachers to have prep. So there's all kinds of implications if you make shifts with the department, but we're looking at all of that. We're not going to, no stone will be left unturned around this. The infrastructure is number one. We've made a step improvement on that. For July 1, we expect that we're going to have all of our schools fiber ready, and so that we can have the devices access the network. And the standard we're looking to use, as I mentioned to the committee before, 5 of these for every user to be able to access simultaneously, because kids aren't just coming in with their iPad. They're might be going to have a tablet, they might be using an iPad, might be on your iPhone, or whatever you have for a device. So we need to make sure we're ready for that and not bog down networks. What's been helpful for us is these site visits have allowed us to ask these questions, and districts that have sort of tripped and fallen on some of these ideas to tell us, yeah, don't do that. Whatever you do, don't do this. And we've been on the mark, and the more we go to these visits, I don't know if you would agree, but we found that we're really on the right track in our methodology, taking it slow and making sure that we're rolling this out correctly.
And the other thing, if I could just interrupt for a second, is we're learning where the other districts kind of hit a roadblock or fell short, and that's really important learning, because we're realizing these are things we're going to avoid, and there's a big community engagement piece that we really need to get on board with in the next probably 6 to 12 months to really get, parents and families to really understand what we're going to do. So that's just another piece of it.
Yeah, it's correct. The other piece is the employability skills. There's Microsoft Office 365 as a solution versus iPads versus Google. What are the industry saying they want graduates to have, whether they're going to college or not? They want them versed in Microsoft. They want to know the whole Office suite. If we're not preparing kids to do that, the world isn't necessarily operating, although it's changing, on apples. So we need to be mindful of the market at the same time. So we're factoring all of this in, and then obviously what's the best solution for Woodland School? Is that the right place to roll out a one-to-one? If you were to phase it, and kind of giving a little precursor here, but if you were to phase it and start in grade 3, do we have 6 years to wait before a high school kid can have a device in their hand? It's too late. Much too long of time would have passed. So we need to think about maybe a multi-tiered approach to this. So all of this being said, we're looking at all these approaches, doing all of our data collection as a researching team, and then bringing it back to have a discussion. I think that's the point. We bring the school committee in and have those budgetary discussions. We know in fiscal 17, this is going to be a reality. We're going to have to appropriate even more money for technology for the actual devices. So all that's the update. We've, as I mentioned, the districts we've seen, so we've seen Google, we've seen the Google Classroom, we've seen Microsoft as a platform, we've seen Apple, and we've seen a bring your own device model in a variation of that in Medfield. The next step is, for the first time, Wally Computers actually sponsoring a debate. It'll be the first time that Microsoft and Google will share the same stage. I think we invited you guys to that, to have a discussion about which is better for schools. and they're gonna sort of duke it out, and we'll be there when they do that. And then the final phase will be for us to come back now and discuss, digest all this, and then come up with an action plan over the next couple of years, what we're gonna do. That will dovetail into Paul's plan. As you come back with the mapping assessment, and we had a vetting the other day on this plan. The mapping assessment didn't seem to reflect necessarily all the servers that were in and around our schools, so there was some gaps in that, which Paul has gone back to now correct. And what we don't know, I think you alluded to it, was, are they giving us or I think Kathy mentioned it, are they giving us a list of, you need to replace everything you have, and here's the cost of that? Or do we have to replace certain items and upgrade here and there? And I'm not clear on that from that report. And so before we come back and put a number on it, because whatever number you throw out publicly,
Yeah.
that's the number that's gonna stick. And before we put a number that sticks, we wanna make sure it's the right one. And then to bridge that number with the school district strategic plan, and then what will follow is a much more detailed technology plan. So all of that has to synchronize. So that's the urgency on my part. I know you have some limitations on that, I understand.
So we're waiting on you, is what he said.
So for the most part, we are. If this mapping drives the price, and the price drives the product, and the product drives what we need in order to have the infrastructure we need to roll out the one-to-one, if all that's delayed, it's gonna create more than a headache for me, and for the school committee, and for the school department, and the kids don't benefit from the program that we're trying to roll out for them. So that's kind of it's a really big series of gears that interconnect on this, but I will say that Paul and his team, we've been meeting very frequently, and Kathy and Kevin have been along for the ride, and we've been really doing a lot of work on technology to get ready to roll out a plan for the school committee. I expect that will happen, as I laid out for one of my goals, before the school year's out. So as we come to to May, June, I'll lay that out for you. Great. Any questions about the?
Can I add just two pieces in terms of, to answer your question, Jen, about curriculum? Sarah Boyle has been integral in just working with teachers to kind of get them to not only use the technology we have in place, but also look out to see, because there's a ton of resources that are out there that are accessible and free that we can incorporate right now. And she's working K through 12, which is part of the reason why we put the second technology integration specialist in that budget request, because she's working with 400 staff members as one person. And I think similarly, where you saw a decrease in the ticket numbers when we added to that department, if we add to the technology, educational side of the technology integration department, it's really going to help training up faculty. And I'm working with her to develop kind of professional development plans, offering courses, and working with individual teachers and teams of teachers who are either using technology and want to enhance it, or want to try something new, whether it's around assessment, whether it's around some asynchronous learning like flipped classroom, that sort of thing. The other thing we're really looking at is I've become a big consumer of blended learning literature, which I know sounds exciting, and I'm happy to share any of the articles with the committee. But we're looking at things like the SAMR model, which is you really want to, they have 4 levels of technology integration, which starts with substitution and goes to redefinition. And you really want to have what the teachers are doing and the students are doing, really modifying what's happening to enhance learning, and really redefining the tasks that kids can accomplish in the classroom through the use of technology. And
Kevin,
go ahead.
I love where you're going with this. What I would say is there's certainly a lot of things that are going into it. Here's what I would say. I think we put on when we get to later in our agenda, and we talk about future agenda items, and if you come back with a if you want to come in and talk about that and give a more in-depth, I think, for the benefit of to Jen's question, I think you bring up a great point. We want to make sure that we're continuing that we're able to give you the due time to be able to give that full presentation.
And I just want to make sure the committee and public knows that we're looking at this through a lot of
deeply
different
engaged
lenses. Yeah, I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah. No, excellent. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate that. Bob.
Yeah, and the other item, just in consistent with our international travel policy, you'll recall we had students from China come to our schools in February, and now we have a team of we have a group of students, the host students, who now want to travel back, along with we have Kevin McIntyre and Jen Lancaster, and 2 parents who have offered to go along on that trip as well. So we have 4 chaperones, about 6 students. We'll be meeting with them next week, but I need the school committee stamp of approval to go forward for international travel. And at this time, I don't have a nurse on the flight.
Just ask Kevin if there's a nurse.
Make a motion. Take a motion from Mike, second from Joey. All in favor? Motion passes. Excellent trip.
If any member of the school committee would like to be part of a future trip, really, in all seriousness, it's a great experience. So let me know. Thank you.
Up next, we have the report
Your
of the
family may
assistant-
not want you to go.
I've got family that's
I'm looking at you. You get a chance to travel.
He speaks Russian, not Mandarin.
Yeah, that's right, I speak Chinese.
My family's actually there, so.
Perfect.
Report of the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. Kevin, you're up.
Great. Just really quickly, I just want to clarify to the public about the graduation requirements, because it's going to be in flux, in September, what's going to be the next step. But right now, through 2018, students need to pass ELA, math, and a science MCAS. Right now in Milford, the two we're offering is the physics and biology. So they have to pass those 3 tests, as well as meet local requirements for graduation. In terms of the process for PARC versus MCAS, I'm actually going to read a paragraph that was on the governor's website, because he's kind of taken the lead along with the Commissioner of Education and Secretary Pizer in terms of the process, and I think this is the briefest way to do it. But the governor has asked the new chair to schedule not fewer than 5 public hearings around the Commonwealth, starting in June, to solicit public comment from local officials, educators, employers, parents, and students, specifically on the implementation of the PARC tests this spring and the impact of Common Core and PARC on curriculum and instruction. In addition, the governor also directed the Secretary of Education to convene an independent advisory group of researchers to assist him in analyzing and synthesizing the relevant studies and to design and oversee additional data collection needed to fill in gaps in the existing research, especially with regard to the predictive validity of the 2 competing tests. And basically, right now, it's tentatively on the September Board of Education agenda, the State Board of Education agenda, to make that determination whether to go with PARC or MCAS for the 15-16 school year, which, if they go for PARC, it's going to change that competency determination to a series of PARC tests as opposed to the MCAS tests. The legislation already has in place that the students currently in 9th grade and the 10th graders will continue to take MCAS, just in terms of fairness, because that's the test they've been accustomed to all the way through. The potential impact is on the 8th grade and below.
Kevin, just a quick question for you with regards to sort of the PARC MCAS. As part of that, as we're obviously deep into budget conversations right now, we know the PARC is designed to be a technology-based test. It's designed to be taken on on computers. We know that at this point, we are not close to, nor do I believe most school systems throughout the Commonwealth are in a position to be able to provide or administer that test in the near future. By technology, certainly not without some very substantial state support and funding. One of the asks that I would have is, as we go forward with this, and as you're continuing to keep in touch with the Governor's Office, Department of Ed, and all of the powers that be here, has that been a topic of conversation for supporting of municipalities and school systems for being able to fund that? Or is it just not even on the spectrum?
I would say 70% of districts in Massachusetts right now cannot implement the PARC
Right.
online.
No, well, I figured it was at least that. So.
Yeah, so that's the actual number based on an assessment the DESE did last year. I think the E-rate is one step, the technology for the E-rate. There's been talk at the federal level. In terms of when we would move to an online, or when we'd be required to move to an online testing platform, it's been unclear, but I've heard the next 2 to 3 years anyways, going forward, if we do move forward with PARC, there'd be a paper and pencil option. There still may be a paper and pencil option beyond that at maybe a cost to districts, potentially, who choose the paper and pencil option. But again, that's just been kind of thrown out there, but there hasn't been specific policy or legislation or kind of directives from the department that have made like clear connections. And I think a lot of it's going to depend on that September vote, whether we go PARC or MCAS, and then we kind of figure out a plan based on that. Right now, we would probably go paper and pencil next year. We may increase that to the 9th and 11th grade as well, to give the high school students and teachers an opportunity to engage with those tests if we do go PARC. But that's something we talk with the school administrators, the curriculum team leaders, and the teachers, and get their input and feedback on that. But I think we're kind of in a holding pattern until really September, when they make that decision.
Because I think that will be important that we then get in front of that. Patrick.
Since I'm empowered to do so, and I have no impetus to play nice with the DESE, may I once again point out the wisdom of these experts in Boston who put together a test that 70% of the towns in the Commonwealth cannot participate in fully. You know, I question the judgment of these people, these self-proclaimed experts in education who have PhDs from Harvard but never spent a year in a classroom. And I am so frustrated when I hear these things that come out of the DESE, these new regulations. I get so upset that none of these are practical applications or are necessarily addressing the problems that we have on a daily basis in our classrooms. And I would really appreciate it, Kevin, since I will probably forget, if you could please forward the information in real time when you find out about the information gathering that the governor is going to do on the Park versus MCAS. I would love to know about that, and if I can participate in it.
Yeah, and I can absolutely share the dates when they set those dates for the public hearings, and you know, maybe like we did the field trip to the MASC event a few weeks ago. Maybe we can take a field trip to one of those. I'm sure they're doing it regionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But absolutely, it's a great point. What's that?
Like the word.
Sorry. I can get off my
Joe.
soapbox now. It wouldn't be here.
Just a quick question, Kevin. Have you got, I know it's early, but we've been doing Park all week. Do you have any preliminary feedback from teachers?
It seems to be going well, like in terms of the administration. Student feedback has been relatively positive. We really don't know until we get the results and how those results match up. But in terms of, I would say the preparation, because it's a new test, has been extremely burdensome because people are familiar with MCAS. It was easy. It was comfortable. There's a lot of differences with Park, and that's taken a lot more preparation. But the actual day-to-day administration has gone very well. And I've been talking to Craig at Woodland, Nancy Angelini, John Hughes, and it seems to be going very well, the preparation and the testing. And people are it's kind of phased at different levels. We had an option to move it back a week. Some buildings took advantage of that.
I assume at some point you'll come in and debrief us on.
Absolutely, but we're right in the thick of it. But I can say that it's going very well at the school level right now. In terms of the administration, it's running very actually amazingly smoothly for the first time for a new test. And I can say that there have been some technology issues across the state with the online implementation of the testing, which I think is a little more complex to do the first time.
I just one quick question. Do you get the results? Do your parents get the results?
So yeah,
or is
so
it just you, and when do we possibly get that?
I just keep it in a bag.
Well, it's your preference.
Unlike the field testing, this is going to be reported out just like the MCAS. So every individual student will get an individualized report based on their performance on the test, and we'll get similar data that's disaggregated by subgroup, by building, by grade level, by individual student. So we're going to get all that information. I'll do a presentation. My sense is we'll probably get the results sometime over the summer.
Okay.
So it'll be on a similar timeline to what I did with MCAS.
I didn't think we'd get them anytime this school year, but I was
Yeah.
curious of when.
And my expectation will be that the scores will probably be a little lower than the MCAS just because it's a more complex, what's being asked of students is significantly more complex than what's asked on the current MCAS.
For a score round, too.
Right,
No
and what
one
the
knows
yeah.
what's going on.
And what the DESE has done is they're trying to do a crosswalk, and they're doing like a data analysis, and that's one of the things the governor is asking the Secretary of Education and the Commissioner to do as well, is to see like all those kids who are in that proficient band, how are they doing on Park? All the kids who are in the needs improvement, the advanced band, you know, how is that translating to Park? And are they predictive of student performance, which is what the governor's one of the governor's big questions was.
Thank you.
I do want to say now that my tide of passion has receded to a safe distance that I believe that our staff will execute this test as well as any staff in the Commonwealth. And there's no doubt in my mind that our students will do as well as any students will on that test. So please don't think I directed any of my rage.
No, and I agree with that sentiment exactly. I think that the staff has taken it very seriously. They've done a fantastic job. The preparation has been phenomenal. And there was a very interesting, we did a presentation at Woodland and at the middle school, and I think I've shared that with you, just about what is Park, what's the process, and kind of a lot of the things I've spoken to here over the course of the last few months. And one of the parents had a great comment that said, you know, I have a student in 4th grade and 8th grade, and you kind of alluded to this earlier too, Jen, is the difference in the curriculum and the expectations between what my 4th grader is experiencing this year compared to what my 8th grader experienced 4 years ago is very different in terms of expectations and what the student's being asked to do. So from someone who really believes in high standards, that kind of warms the cockles of my heart. I'm not necessarily sure nationally we're going about this in exactly the right way, but in terms of holding students to high expectations and better results, I think those things are happening in the Milford Public Schools, and I'm very pleased to hear it anecdotally, but if you look at, our results over time, I think we're seeing nice progress.
Mike?
Real quick, just to Patrick's point, when Joe and I and Bob and Kevin went to the funding meeting, going in there expecting that they were gonna talk about the funding formula that hasn't been changed since 1993, and I think everybody would agree with me,
Didn't happen.
we walked out of the room like,
Doesn't surprise me. with them.
so very frustrating, so I share your point.
And that was to my question as well, which is, it must be a wonderful world to live in to make decisions with no consequence and not have to worry about what, and not have to worry about what the end user's feedback or results will be. I have all confidence our teachers will continue to do a phenomenal job. I just want to make sure we give them every leg up and that we possibly can, rather than tie both our arms around behind their back and tell them to swim to China.
No, they've met this challenge head on.
So
I'm
I think they're
very
going to
proud
do
of
an
the teaching
amazing
staff.
job, and I have no question that our teachers and our students are going to do a phenomenal job. So thank you, Kevin. Up next, report of the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Human Resources. Kathy.
Thank you. I have for the committee this evening 3 warrants for your approval. The first warrant is in the amount of $38,310.42.
Okay. Take a motion from Patrick, second from Dawn. All in favor? Motion passes.
The second warrant is in the amount of $267,803.18.
Take a motion from Mike, second from Joe. All in favor? Motion passes.
The last warrant is in the amount of $83,815.82.
I'll take a motion from Joey, second from Jen. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you.
The committee also has a financial update from our previous monthly update. I also have for the committee a list of the newest hires from our previous meeting. No vote is required. I also have 3 field trips that do require school committee approval. The first is a trip for the 4th grade to go to the Woonsocket Museum of Work and Culture in Rhode Island on 2 days, June 18th and June 19th, to fulfill the entire 4th grade. And that is being handled with a Milford bus. And that does require school committee vote because it's out of state.
Since I love Woonsocket so much, may I be the person with the motion that we approve the field trip to the, what's the name of the museum? What is it?
The Woonsocket.
Work and Industry or something?
Work and
Mu-
culture.
Work and Culture.
Work and culture.
Fascinating. I have to go sometime. I had no idea
it's a
Woonsocket
really
had a
nice
museum until I
museum,
served the school committee.
Picture is cool.
So I have a motion from Patrick. That's you. It's the first time for everything. So motion from Patrick, second from Joey. All in favor? Motion passes. Kathy?
And now we're gonna travel a little further to Providence, Rhode Island
All
for the
the way from
kindergarten
Woonsocket,
class
Got it.
to go to Roger Williams Zoo. And that will be on Tuesday, May 19th, with a rain date of May 26th.
Okay.
And
Great.
that also requires approval.
Anybody requesting to make this motion? Motion from Dawn, second from Mike. All in favor? Motion passes. That's a great trip. So I know those kids do. They have such an amazing time on that.
Great
so.
museum. Zoo. It's a wonderful zoo.
Polar bear exhibit.
Okay.
They have the giraffe and the elephant house is indoors, so if it's a rainy day, it's a great place to take your kids.
There you go.
That's the first time I ever saw an elephant there. I
Yeah.
was like, wow.
Big wow.
We can tell it's getting late. We're getting a little
Yeah.
pushy on the school committee, so we're gonna hurry this along. Kathy, please
God.
continue on
It was
here.
a long day yesterday. Okay. We also have, and I believe it's the trip that was mentioned this evening, the debate team, and they are traveling to Stamford, Connecticut on April 25th and 26th. This also requires it's actually an overnight. I apologize. There is a nurse attending, and it does require a vote.
Okay. Take a motion from Joey, second from Jen. All in favor? Motion passes. I'm glad that group's gonna be able to attend that event. It's certainly a great event, and glad we were able to get that done.
Absolutely.
Great.
And there, I don't want to interrupt, Mr. Chair, but there are gifts.
We've got gifts. All right, thank you for reminding me. Up next, we have for gifts, we have a Family Network gift. And it's for contracted services and supplies. It's for $770, which is fantastic. So certainly, we'll take a motion to accept that gift. A motion from Patrick, second from Joe. All in favor? Motion passes. Up next,
Scott?
yes.
I think Kathy just said there's a lot of them. So do you want,
Yeah,
can you
we've
just
got-
read through them
no,
and we
just
take one
two.
vote at the end?
There is a list provided, thank you, Don, with all the names behind the gift sheet.
On this one?
Ah, here we go. Oh, boy. Yeah, we certainly do. So let me just read them off, and we'll take them all as one.
There you go.
Unless somebody, because I had literally 2 sheets in here, and it's, so we'll take this. So we do have Family Network gifts, so it was all in the, it was the total amount of the $770 that we did just approve, but I do want to make sure for recognition purposes that we do read off every name, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name.
There's a couple there, Scott.
Yeah, I know, so I appreciate you adding
Don't
some.
look to me to help you.
I was hoping I was gonna get through my entire year of chair without having to pronounce anybody's last name, but I appreciate the curveball at the end.
You should just make Bob read the list.
We could do that. So, gift from the Family Network. So, we've got Alyssa and Chris Fiedler in the amount of $25. We have Christian and Alistair Barnett for $30. We have Nina, I'm gonna butcher this one, Callis, C-A-L-E-S, for $100, which is fantastic. All very generous here. Anna Lee and Ryan McDaniel for $25. James and Andrea McCoy for $25. Miranda and Sean Simon for $25. James and Michelle Henbury for $100. Jason Gabralt for $50. Joshua and Laura, yeah, I'm gonna mess this one up. You got any help on this one?
Ingemi?
Sure, we'll go with Ingemi. I-N-G-E-M-I, Joshua and Laura Ingemi, I apologize if I mispronounced the name, for $150. Yan Zhang and Barry Gaither for $25. Andrea, Rhonda, and Danielle D'Amata for $25. Stephanie Marcotte for $25. Howard and Jolie Orloff for $50. Jason and Amy Hill, $40. Jessica Porter, $25. Ingia Trans Family for $50. So I'm gonna read the last one on here. There's not a list of 700 names on
No,
this, is there?
you
Okay,
did a
good.
good job, Scott.
Yeah, thank you. For the last one would be a gift from the class of 1927, which is amazing, in the amount of $3,912.73. So extremely generous gift, really all the way around from everyone. So I will take it as one single motion for accepting all of these very, very generous gifts. So I'll take a motion from Mike, second from Jen. All in favor? Thank you so much. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you
Class
guys.
of 1927 was in place when that plaque commemorating World War I was installed out in the hall.
Yeah,
Originally installed.
amazing. Yeah,
That's amazing.
that's fantastic. And it was not originally installed.
No. Yeah.
No, it was about 9 buildings ago. Excellent. So we'll move on here. So Kathy, does that wrap you up?
Yes, thank you,
All set?
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, up next we have subcommittee updates. Athletics? Have you met?
I've got some stuff. I talked to Peter, I emailed Peter, I haven't had the time to actually get out and have him and I meet. I asked him if he wanted me to bring anything to the table, you know, to the committee. He got some good feedback for me. I see that Milford's athletic department has been getting some good public, you know, recognition. He was telling me here in the email that, you know, the MIAA has, you know, historically just pushed the spring sports out an extra week due to the weather. And with that, what he was telling me is that, you know, they have no room or anywhere to practice. So what they've been doing is, you know, trying to get conditioning and skills and drills without going outside. So they're trying to get all this collaborative work between all the principals with all the schools and use all the room that they humanly possibly can. It tells me that they're using the swimming pool and the two cheer and wrestling rooms to do conditioning, small practice sessions, and a lot of other rotating the gym schedules as well. In short, the MIAA got a big whiff of this and wanted a press conference with him, and I believe he was telling me Paul Pellegrini. Well, they did that, and then New England Cable News got word of that. So once that happened, he told me that the New England Cable News was talking to the MIAA and go, where can we go to find out this is awesome? Who's doing this? Milford's doing it. So they went and interviewed Peter and Coach Pellegrini. And then it goes on. The Weather Channel, who owns NECN, called and asked to do a national interview with Coach Pellegrini and him because of the segment. This went live on Saturday AM on TV. WBZ Radio also got wind of it.
No kidding.
So they called him on Tuesday, and they did a phone interview with him in that as well. So it seems like everyone's really, wow, Milford's really got this down. Their athletic department is just skyrocketing. And that might be something we could bring to the finance committee when they asked us about, promoting Milford. It's all right here. And Peter's doing a great job of only being on the job for a few months. Outstanding.
That's amazing.
Some of the other things he wanted to bring up was that he's very excited about opening up the Wellness Center, which is opening up in a couple weeks. I think you were involved in that as well. He's just ecstatic about that opening up and the possibilities that we can use. One of the other things he wanted me to mention, one of our star athletes, Griffin Lynch, senior hockey captain, was just voted the MIAA Sportsmanship Award for hockey for the Hockomock League.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Trade names.
With him winning that award, he gets to go to the Bruins game on ice on the 31st and get presented that award. So I mean,
That's awesome.
Great.
Peter's doing a great job, and it
sure
shows it right here. And I just asked him if he had a couple examples for me to bring to the table, and he'd book almost. So
It's excellent. Well,
Yeah.
that's
Great job.
and he also wanted to mention too the reason why they can't do much outside. Not only because of the snow, but the track and all the tennis courts and everything. Those are still under warranty. So we can't just go and start shoveling them off because we'll just damage them. So a lot of parents that I've heard, why don't you just use the tennis courts? Why don't you use the track of the field? Well, we can't because it's under warranty. And some other towns that have done that have done it to, they've damaged their turf fields and everything. So that's one of the reasons why this is such a good thing for them.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up, Joe, because that's actually something that's been brought to my attention as
Right.
well. Is these towns are shoveling them out. How come we're not? And I think it's excellent for public knowledge that these are still under warranty, and we take the taxpayer dollars that were
Right.
the significant taxpayer investment into those fields and those facilities very, very seriously. And we want to make sure we're not violating the warranty, and B, we're not damaging them. With a couple extra weeks of pain and creative thinking, thanks in large part to our athletic director and our talented coaching staff, to be able to preserve those facilities is phenomenal. So thanks for that update and kudos. Up next, policy subcommittee. We already got your update. You have anything else?
Nope, just the
Okay.
next meeting is April 13th.
Great, thank you. Wellness,
No meeting,
okay. Safety and security,
no meeting.
okay. Middle school reuse committee, we've not had any meetings since, we have our meetings at the beginning of the month, so our next one will be next month. Woodland School Building Project.
So a couple of updates.
Yep.
We received at our last meeting a timeline of all of the stages of construction. So believe it or not, we're moving in equipment in the last week of March, which is just unbelievable to me. And it's actually great. We have a little bit of a melt now. So we tentatively scheduled a groundbreaking ceremony, which will be April 11th. It's a Saturday at 10 a.m. So that's subject to change. The first stage is going to be to start clearing some land, clearing some trees out so we can put in access roads and start work on the new building. And I could bring in the sheet. It's gigantic, and it lists when they're going to start drywall, when they're going to start painting and caulking. I mean, they have to caulk the building for 6 months. It's unbelievable to me. But we do have a breakdown of all of that, and so it was very encouraging. It was great to see. Not always good news. When we went into the purchase of the HVAC system, we had anticipated that we were going to have greater than 90% efficiency on the heating system. Well, it turns out, based upon where it's located on the building, we're actually going to have a greater than 80% efficiency on that heating system, which is something that was a subject of some debate. And the reason is not because the system itself is less efficient, but because it's located on the roof. That it may need to be heated to keep the condensers from freezing, and that negatively impacts its overall efficiency rating. So it's not because the system is bad, it's because we need to use electricity to keep the system warm. So we asked the architect to go back and say, give us some solutions here. Tell us what the difference is going to be in cost in operating the system, and give us some potential fixes so we can not incur that potential heating loss. So not bad. I mean, you know, it could turn out that it's $10 more natural gas a month, and you know, I mean, if that's what it is, then that's too bad. But you know, it's not the end of the world. If it's something bigger, then we're going to address it. So, but I mean, overall, I mean, that was the small piece of, you know, negative news, and everything else is just glowing. Everything's moving along great. And right now, tentatively, we are scheduled to move into that building September 21st, 2016.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
So we are done with that. Up next, we have future agenda items. I've already got on here World Bin and Wally coming in and giving an update. Continue update on technology, just a continue update of status on that. I've got that on there. We've already got not for future agenda items for this committee at this time, but the field trip request form review that Dawn had proposed for the policy subcommittee to take away. Any other future agenda items for the group? I do have one future agenda item, and this will actually also fall under old business. As we've been talking about over the last several months here, we've been talking a lot about our English language learners program, and you know, the cost impact that's occurred with that impact, and where that cost is coming from is really directly from the taxpayer. So I've been in ongoing contact with our state legislatures, both Representative Fernandez as well as Senator Fatman. I'm very pleased to share with this board that legislation has been filed that will allow for school systems such as Milford, if it's passed, to qualify for circuit breaker money if there is a unforeseen circumstance where we have late registration and an influx of students that qualify for English language learning. School systems would be able to qualify for a circuit breaker at our regular reimbursement rate for those additional students.
That's huge.
So that is a very, very significant step forward. It has gone through, it's in the process of going through legal review in the legislature. There's a whole process that it's got to go through. So this bill has been filed. Through my conversation with Representative Fernandez, I certainly want to thank him for, he was the one who has filed the bill. Certainly want to thank him for that. Through my conversation with him, you know, my question, as it has been all the way through, is how can we help? And my ask for the future agenda item is that we ask Bob to reach out through the Mass Association of Superintendents and draft a letter on to that group, asking for them to reach out to their legislators to help support this bill. I would also ask that we look to draft a bill for each member of this committee to sign and put forth to our brothers and sisters of school committees across the Commonwealth, to ask them to also reach out to their legislatures the same way that we have here in Milford, to ask them to help support this bill. It's a very significant step forward. It will help school systems and towns such as Milford to be able to get that offset and that taxpayer relief, because right now, as we've seen this year, we had 60 extra students just in the last 12 months based on the way the law is written, and if it gets passed, this is, we would qualify for that circuit breaker, which gives that tax relief to Milford. So it's something that I've been very passionate about. I'm very, very pleased that we've taken a very significant step forward. There's still a lot of work to do, but that would be my ask for the future agenda item, is that we do put that on there to have that letter drafted and signed by the school committee to be put forth to ask for that support. Joe.
Scott, I would just add to that, on April 29th, we have the Day on the Hill, which is a joint conference between the MESC and the superintendents. It's an opportunity to get in front of all the legislators. I believe Governor Milford will be there as well as a speaker. So if we can get that message out there to our colleagues and then rally around them on April 29th, I think that would be very helpful.
Excellent.
And I think we have to register by the 24th, so we probably should, talk through it to see who's going to be able to attend that day and then
Excellent.
register.
Great. Thank you. Any other future agenda items? Okay. Old business. Any other old business?
Can I give my farewell speech?
You can, right before adjournment here, it was supposed to be announcements to correspondence, but all right, Don.
All right. So,
with the permission of the committee, of course.
First of all, I am old. But first of all, I'd like to thank my fellow committee members, the administration, but most importantly, the citizens of Milford for allowing me to represent them over the last 3 years. I'm a sales rep, and last week we had a training on how to get clients to move from the status quo. And it's a tough thing because that's a person's comfort place. But if you do it, things get better and progress. And I think I've proven over the last 3 years that I wasn't afraid of controversial issues or taking on big tasks, right? And although I may have upset a few people along the way, stirred up the emotions of groups, and even made Bob feel uncomfortable, the fact is someone has to be willing to do these things to ensure things continue to improve. Unfortunately, to Joe's point before, it does take a year or two before a member fully understands the process. And I'd really like to take a minute to thank Scott, Mike, and Pat, and Jerry Moody, who I know is not here, for really coaching me along the way during those 3 years. I really appreciate it. Also, Bob Tremblay is an important asset to this town. And although some didn't think I liked Bob, including Bob, it was just the opposite. As 1/7 of his manager, I didn't want him to get stuck in the status quo, right? During my first evaluation, I told him, you're our Tom Brady, and you need to improve your managerial skills to be a better leader and to help drive the team towards common goals. But even Brady needs a Coach Belichick, right? The only, the one person that really sticks out to me, though, as the MVP of the district and the town of Milford is Kathy Perry. She has the responsibility of managing our budget. She does an amazing job, and Milford is extremely lucky to have her. During my tenure here, I was able to help several improvements either come to life or advance, and the following are the three that I'm most proud of. First, when our safety and security director resigned, we reallocated the responsibilities back to the administration where they belonged. And we're able to apply those funds towards videos, building the holding areas in schools that didn't have them, and Bob's mock live shooter training. All of these were the result of the Safety and Security Subcommittee, which has made major improvements to our schools in a short period of time. Secondly, refocusing efforts on drug and alcohol awareness, working with guidance to help them prepare pamphlets for parents with children in need, to help educate them on the available resources, and of course bring Chris Herron back for an evening show for the community, which was a huge success. And I want to thank Joe for helping me raise the funds for that. Finally, stopping the status quo when there was a rush to name an AD by having Bob convince Nick Zakili to sit in as the interim, which Nick did flawlessly. This enabled us to put the appropriate time and effort in finding the best candidate. And although Pete's been here for a short time, just a few months, it's already evident that he's doing a great job resurrecting the programs and elevating the spirit here at Milford High School through Hawk of the Week and other great ideas like the Youth Autograph Night, not to mention the ones that you mentioned, Joey. In summary, I'm very proud of my service. I'm very proud that I was able to give back to my hometown. I left. It was a tough decision, but my dad's sick, so doing the right thing for my family, but it was fun. I really enjoyed it. I wish I could stay, but things change, but I want to thank all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
So, with that being said, Donnie, thank you for your service and thank you for your time. And our next agenda item is our motion to adjourn. So, Donnie, if you're up to it.
It's always my favorite part.
So we have a motion from Donnie, his last one of this as a school committee member. A second from Michael. All in favor. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.